everyone, to this week's episode of New Money. I'm Tracy Chang. Now, imagine a town for children where kids can pretend to do over 80 jobs, from a fireman to a doctor and even an astronaut. Here in China, these types of play centers are sprawling everywhere. This week, we profile Beijing's Yi City, a massive community center focusing on job stimulation for children, but on a much larger scale.
These fun-looking activities are career-related entertainment services provided by a company called Yi City. Children can role-play their dream jobs here and feel the joy that work brings.
The children get experience-based education. These are hands-on activities. When they come here, they get to work with other people or do certain things by themselves.
The concept of providing children an opportunity to experience adult jobs first appeared in Mexico in 1999, when businessman Xavier Lopez established a company called Xania. Lopez's model was later introduced to Europe, but it received a lukewarm welcome there, and many companies saw their business slow to a standstill. China, however, has proven to be a much better market. Educational entertainment centers for children were built in Beijing, Shanghai, and other first-tier Chinese cities in the early 2000s. For a while, the centers were bustling with youngsters from across China. The model's rapid expansion in China has provided a stark contrast to its reception in Europe.
In the United States or Europe, kids are often put through career-related classes from kindergarten on. In China, we tend to focus more on teaching children academic knowledge rather than character building. So when kids see this new kind of mix between entertainment and education, they get very excited.
Chinese investors quickly discovered the youth market, and the entertainment centers rapidly spread across the country. According to China Rong, a company that invests in and operates such outlets, nearly 100 were opened in China by 2014. But making money was not as simple as the owners thought.
Stores are sprouting everywhere in China. There were as many as 7 in Beijing, but 5 of them have shut down. People figured they could get rich investing in this, and some people did. The stores in Beijing lost at least 40 million yuan each, but they didn't understand the business. The quality of the venues was poor and didn't look like real-life workplaces.
Li Jingdong is the man behind Yi City. The former senior army colonel with 30 years of military service discovered the educational entertainment centers while on a trip abroad and was deeply intrigued.
I immediately found it very interesting and said we could borrow the idea. I thought it would be good for the next generation's education, so I thought that this would have to be done well. It would have to be high-end, high quality. I'd rather not do it than do something average.
Li's first decision was to place his store in Joy City, a large shopping mall in eastern Beijing. The mall's management was optimistic about the project after seeing Li's proposal.
They considered our project a new industry that would attract many families. They thought that if I did it right, it would improve customer flow to their mall. That would include parents who would be willing to spend money in other parts of the mall.
Once Li secured a location, it was time to design the center. However, when Li and his team began to look at the details, they quickly realized that they didn't know where to start.
There were a lot of details and concepts that we hadn't figured out yet. For instance, how to design the store, what size would it be? No Chinese architect had ever designed anything like this. So we invited a Japanese architect company that had designed a similar store in Tokyo. We told them to make it better than similar stores abroad, so they laid down some hard work. They worked on it for 16 months.
When EE City opened in 2011, it covered an area of 18,600 square meters, enough space for 2.5 soccer pitches. The center has gained in popularity since, and some parents even bring their children there from other provinces. The Joy City Mall says 500,000 people visited EE City in 2014, accounting for nearly 40% of the mall's customers. The mall estimates that EE City will attract more than 700,000 visitors this year.
Well, just a reminder, folks, you can use your smartphone to scan the QR code on the bottom of your screen to follow the current and all the other previous episodes of New Money. And joining us today to talk about EE City is Professor Jia Ning, and she is the Deputy Director of Tsinghua China Business Center. Welcome, Professor Jia. So, as we can see, this business failed to prosper and take roots in Europe, but it's doing really well in China. Why?
Well, I think there are really two main reasons. The first one is demand related, in that I think European countries generally have a large number of public facilities, such as science museum, for children to engage in experiential learning activities. And learning by doing is also incorporated heavily into their regular academic curriculum. So there's really little room and demand for independent third-party service providers such as EE Cities. But in contrast, in China, we still lack public provision of such services. So there's more demand, for companies like EE City, and that's demand-related reason. And I think another reason is actually supply-related. In some sense, that if you look at EE City's business model, it really is a real estate project. It's a commercial real estate project. And we know this market in China in the last decade has been booming, right? So that's why we start to see an increasing supply of companies like EE City as well.
Certainly, and we see that on top of that, we also have more children in China, perhaps.
That's
and more people demanding this type of service.
Yes.
So, Professor Jia, industry players are mushrooming everywhere, but not everyone is profiting from this very lucrative teen and children business. Some companies even lost money and left the market. Why is this happening?
Well, I think competition is an obvious reason, but I think another challenge for this kind of business is the potential misalignment between revenue and expenditures. Companies like EE Cities are highly capital intensive. They require significant upfront investment into building up the basic infrastructure and also continued investment into maintaining the operation over time. So this kind of business model can easily get stuck in the so-called valley of death, and we're looking at a graphic illustration of that, which means the company would be operating at a loss and constantly experiencing cash outflow for an extended period of time before the company is able to find enough revenue to break even. Right? So the challenge here is if a company can't find that revenue momentum soon, or fails to find an external investor who's able to and who's willing to continue to invest in the company and support the operation, they will run out of cash and end up going out of business.
You really have to have ample liquidity for this company to work.
That's right.
Professor Jia, EE City's business model is essentially adopted from a Western model. But when it comes to running this business in China, it's a quite different story. What are some of the unique challenges of doing this business in China?
Right, that's a great question, Tracy. I think for any business that borrows a proven idea from the West and try to implement in China, understanding the local market environment, understanding the local customer preference, and doing enough local adaptation is very, very important. For projects like EE City, I think there are several China-specific issues to think about. The first one would be positioning. Is this education-oriented or is it entertainment-oriented business? We all know that Chinese parents are much more willing to pay for their children's education than paying for their leisure time or extracurricular activities. So if EE City is able to position itself as an education provider, it's going to be able to attract a lot more parents and children, right? And a second China-specific issue to think about is actually higher population density, meaning that at any any given point in time, there'll be more children lining up, in front of a workstation trying to play. So when it comes to designing the facility, the center, they really need to think about how to avoid a long waiting time in front of each workstation. Right? And the third China-specific issue to think about is the higher vacancy rate, especially on weekdays. That's because unlike Western countries, children in China usually finish school pretty late on weekdays. So it's very unlikely they will end up going to Yi City on weekdays, but they will be getting very crowded on weekend. Right? So how does Yi City manage that revenue differentials between the weekdays and weekend? That's another concern. And another China-specific issue to think about is competition, especially from other after-school and weekend educational programs. And as we all know, China definitely has no shortage of that, right? So competition, that's going to be more intense in China.
It's very interesting because Chinese parents are willing to spend more, but Chinese children have less time to play because they've got all the other after-school programs they have to attend to.
That's right.
Very interesting.
It's a dilemma. Yeah.
Well, that's a very interesting way to make money indeed. Well, folks, we talked about a business model of Yi City. Up next, we analyze Yi City's trumpet cards and find out how the company innovates. But before that, just another reminder that you can always follow us on WeChat, Weibo, Facebook, and YouTube to get this and all the latest episodes of New Money. Stay with us.